Bibliophiles of the internet, my name is Adriana, and today I'm here to give you 5 reasons to read Slade by Brittney Morris. I will be linking any Own Voices reviews I can find down below because I believe the voices and thoughts of Black reviewers should be prioritized first. Slade is an Own Voices YA contemporary story about a Black teenager named Kira who's the creator and developer of an MMORPG known as Slade. It's a dueling game where players face off using cards, and the cards are inspired by Black culture and iconic staples of the African diaspora, which is why the game is exclusive to Black gamers. When a player is killed over an in-game dispute, Slade is suddenly all over the news, and people are falsely claiming that the creator must be exclusionist and racist. No one knows that Kira is the creator, so she is alone in having to suddenly navigate the national media, people threatening legal action, and racist trolls trying to infiltrate Slade and her inbox. And all of this makes her think about what kind of world she's trying to create and who she can really trust. Content warnings for use of the N-word towards the protagonist, online harassment, racist trolling, and exploration of manipulative and abusive relationships. Reason number 1 to read this book is that it engages head-on with the micro and macro aggressions Black gamers face. This story touches on how the internet and online culture can be freeing in some ways because you're able to express yourself in a way that's authoritative and anonymous, but then there's a flip side to that if you're not part of the dominant culture and if you're different. Especially in the world of online gaming, when there's no accountability, when people have the opportunity to express themselves without consequences, they often resort to saying things that are disgusting, sexist, and racist. Not only that, but it can be really hard to create a character in an MMORPG who looks like you if you are not white. Kira talks about this other popular online game where the only dark-skinned characters are a race of dwarves, and they're often unattractive and have very exaggerated, inhuman features. So if she wants to play a character who looks even close to her own skin tone, she's not even allowed to be human, which really sends its own kind of message. And that's part of why she created Slade, to create a place where Black gamers build each other up and celebrate each other, where the expression of their culture is at the forefront and not a compromise they have to make in order to enjoy themselves. Reason number 2, Slade is a study in the importance of how we create and cultivate safe spaces. The author, Brittney Morris, has spoken a lot about why she wanted to create the world of Slade and show Black readers that this kind of safe online haven can and should exist. And something she's talked about is that Slade is a space where Black gamers and contemporaries can exist without having to navigate the white gaze, and where they're not expected to prioritize white comfort. When they're logged in, they don't have to answer questions about their history, their identity, their presentation. They don't have to worry if they're Black enough. They have one clear objective, and that's to play the best hand they can possibly get. Slade's exclusivity is a safety measure. It's not a decree that non-Black people can't be good or empathetic. It's an acknowledgement that the people who are like you and who have similar experiences to yours are more likely to show empathy and respect. But again, it's not saying that certain people are not good enough to enter the space, but that the space is sacred and gives a measure of freedom and peace to Black folks who don't get to have that as much as they should. In the story, Kira talks about Slade as a mutually empathetic collective where all kinds of Blackness are honored and given space to exist, and that's why she continues to protect this safe space. Reason number 3, online creations like Slade are essential in counter-storying culture in this new age. I was actually thinking about this in relation to The Dark Fantastic by Ebony Elizabeth Thomas, which is where I pulled the term counter-story from. And to counter-story something means to provide an alternative understanding or narrative about things we consider to be quote-unquote cultural fixtures. So for instance, if the only Black character in a popular movie was a supporting character, a way for a Black artist to counter-story that narrative would be to rewrite the entire story from that character's point of view. In other words, counter-storying is how we can recontextualize and reimagine stories. It's how we center our lived experiences and remake things in our image, which changes how we understand personhood itself. This all comes back to the world of Slade because society loves to portray Blackness as only one thing, that it's ghetto, it's poverty, it's trauma, it's a legacy of suffering, it's hardship, it's violence, it's a death sentence, and then Slade says, actually, it's not. Using technology, using social media, Kira is able to amplify Black excellence and recontextualize what it means to value and celebrate your Blackness. That's the beauty of the cards in Slade. They encourage Black gamers to learn about their culture and their roots, and then there's a direct direct positive correlation to how that understanding can help them win in the most literal sense. And most importantly, within this online space, there's room enough for every user's story to play out and exist. Reason number 4 is that this story rejects all forms of elitism and respectability politics in no uncertain terms. Even now, society reinforces this idea that Black folks have to rise above whatever the world perceives to be their predisposed setbacks. That includes these awful stereotypes that Black people are inherently angry, violent, lazy, uneducated, or less, which of course is not true. And here you mostly see that line of thinking from Kira's boyfriend, Malcolm, who believes that, like him, Kira should only read from Black intellects, only associate with Black people, only apply to HBCUs, so that she is quote-unquote worthy of her Blackness. But it can also show itself in something as small as Kira's parents telling her not to use the words ain't or y'all when she's in the house. So she's constantly getting this messaging that she has to act a certain way and that she has to set herself apart from those Black people, whoever that is, and limit her world in a very specific way if she hopes to transcend her white counterparts. And it's a complicated problem because in some ways this kind of thinking veils itself and can come off as empowerment when really it's a form of elitism and anti-Blackness and a manifestation of self-hatred and self-doubt. Kira is realizing that she shouldn't have to conform to this abstract idea of what a good Black person is, and that those very specific parameters of what it means to be good and proper plays right into society's hands in limiting our understanding of Blackness. As she says in her own words, Kira rejects this idea that Black people who don't live up to whatever standard society has are somehow less worthy of love and support. It's not easy because these ideas can be perpetuated from outside of the community and within, and it becomes a question of whose value and whose respect you truly seek and for what purpose. And reason number 5, this story shows how Black experiences are not monolithic and how that's something we should embrace. This idea of what makes up the Black experience has never been something that can be portrayed in broad strokes. This story shows how the community's understanding of what defines Blackness should always be changing because people are always changing. One of my favorite lines is when Kira says, "Your Black is not my Black," and that's okay. There's an infinite combination of experiences that can add up to shape one person's Blackness, and when we limit what those experiences can be and can look like, everyone loses. A great example of this in the story is the cards in Slade, because Kira and her fellow mod Cicada are always trying to add new cards, and they can be anything from Black icons to movie references to dance moves to food types. And the community can never come to a consensus on what cards should be added because Black people exist everywhere in the world, and what makes sense for Black Americans may not work for people living in Africa, for Black Europeans, for Afro-Latinx folks, and it shouldn't have to work for everyone. That's why the deck is always changing and growing, because the fact that something doesn't match your own experience doesn't mean it's not a valuable reference point or experience for someone else. You can even see it in the relationship between Kira and her younger sister Steph. These are two people raised at the same time in the same place by the same people, instilled with the same values, sharing the same experiences, and they are completely different. If two people living in the same house in the same family don't match up one for one in their experiences, why would we expect any other African descended people to have the same experiences? When we fail to see other people's experiences as valuable or valid, that puts a limit on who belongs and who doesn't. And Kira is not interested in creating that kind of world, whether it's online or off. So those are just 5 reasons of many to read this awesome book. I didn't even get to talk about the validation of online friendship, the amazing relationship between siblings, the incredibly well thought out mechanics of the game, among so many more pitch perfect elements, but suffice to say, I definitely recommend it. If you have any thoughts to share about this story or recommendations for books like it, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. But that's everything I had for this review/recommendation today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye.